The only conclusions that I can come up with are very, very pessimistic about what the Democrats actually want. And I think it's just gun confiscation is the only answer. They don't want to fix the problem. They want to take the gun.
We are the Armed Attorneys. Today we're talking about a battle in the Senate between anti-gun Senator Chris Murphy and Senator Ted Cruz, duking it out on the Senate floor.
I mean, is it really duking it out if one person turns tail and runs immediately?
But this may kind of flew under the radar, but it's worth discussing because, I mean, there's some procedural moves here. There's some moves by the left side of the Senate. And I think it's really a fascinating topic to discuss and kind of the strategy going forward because we need to have solutions to this stuff. But before we begin, show your support for the Second Amendment by hitting that like button. And today's video is brought to you by our friends over at Gunspot. Now, we're going to play this clip for you in just a moment, but to give you some context, what we see coming up is a motion by Senator Ted Cruz, senator from Texas, moving for unanimous consent on a bill that would have provided funding for police and potentially allowing teachers to arm themselves in schools. Now, when a senator moves for unanimous consent, that's basically like, if nobody objects, this thing is going to pass. But then what do we see? Edwin Walker, and we'll play this clip right after.
Yeah, this has to do with three bills that Ted Cruz filed, S-1081, 1082, and 1083, in which these are three bills that he had previously filed, previously sponsored. So these are not new pieces, because one thing Chris Murphy does, he says, well, haven't you had time to read it? It's the exact same thing he has filed before. You've had plenty of time to read it. Don't be disingenuous.
Yeah.
So what it does is it simply says that it provides money for police officers to be at schools, money for mental health professionals to be at schools, and for schools to use money that for strengthening their infrastructure, bulletproof glass, bulletproof doors, door locks, door stops, things like that, to harden the schools.
Yeah, let's check out this clip.
Senator from Connecticut.
Madam President, I object.
Objection is heard.
Madam President, what we just saw on this floor was stunning. I am genuinely at a loss for words. This bill is common sense. There is not a constituent in Texas or Nevada or Connecticut who, if you asked, would it be a good thing to have more police officers keeping our kids safe, wouldn't say, of course it would. There's not a constituent of ours who, if you asked, would it be a good thing to have more mental health counselors on campus to stop people from committing crimes, would say, of course it would. I was informed a few days ago that when I was going to seek unanimous consent, the senator from Connecticut was going to object. Now, the senator from Connecticut styles himself the leading advocate of gun control in the U.S. Senate. I was asked by reporters, why are the Democrats objecting to this? And I'll tell you what I told reporters. I have no idea. They haven't said. They haven't told me why they object to it. And so I was genuinely looking forward to seeing the senator from Connecticut's remarks. I was sitting here waiting to see, why do you oppose more police officers to keep our kids safe? Why do you oppose mental health counselors in schools? I've been in the Senate 10 years. The senator from Connecticut and I were elected at the same time. I've engaged in many debates on this floor, including with the senator from Connecticut. The fact that he chose not to say a word about why he objects is stunning. I find myself genuinely flabbergasted.
So what's objectionable about that?
They won't say what's objectionable. And especially in light of one of those bills, I believe it's 1081, simply says that they're not even appropriating new money. They're just saying, apparently the COVID money, which, the U.S. Congress invented the idea of throwing money at problems. Okay, so we can debate whether or not money should be spent in the first place. I consider myself an Article 1, Section 8 purist, in which I don't think the Congress ought to spend money on anything that's not specifically delineated in Article 1, Section 8. However, in this particular instance, this is money that's already been spent. It's unused COVID money. And apparently the Democrats, whenever they passed the COVID, said, you cannot spend this money for school security, which makes zero sense at all. I mean, if you're going to have security against a virus, you should have security against crazy people.
Sure.
And Ted Cruz wants to take that out, in which his bill was a one-line bill that specifically said schools can use these unused COVID funds that we've already given them for purposes of school security, and the Democrats do not want that to pass.
And so, and this same thing happened with Moms Demand Action here in Texas. We had SB3, which would have done the same thing on the state level here.
That's right.
And we have anti-gun groups opposing hardening schools. I don't get it.
I don't know. And they are not clear about their reasoning. And that's the fishiest part to me, is like, you know, there are times when you oppose something that sounds really good, but you do it for a good reason. That happens to us all the time.
Well,
right?
I know the reason. I mean, the reason is as opaque as a pane of glass. It's because they're willing to demagogue, and they're willing to argue with an appeal to emotion, and they're willing to use the terrible, bodies of dead children to do it. They don't care about school safety. They care about taking guns.
Yes. Well, and
that's what they care about. That's their objective.
And I was going to say, like, I will give the benefit of the doubt to hear the argument, because, for example, a woman who has argued against things that sound very common sense to most people, like red flag laws, right?
Yeah.
I mean, gosh, in Texas in the 2021 session, I had to stand up and argue against the George Floyd bill, which
you were very popular that day.
I was not very popular that day, because it was going to do some bad things to the self-defense law.
That's
and
right.
so I had to stand up and say, listen, entire room of people against me. Here is the rational argument. But when you won't even give a rational argument as to why you oppose something that does appear to be such common sense, I'm with Ted Cruz. I'm flabbergasted. I don't know what to make of it.
The only excuse that Chris Murphy has ever articulated that I have seen, and he does this he'll do it on, a talk show on MSNBC or CNN. He won't do it on the Senate floor, but he says that this bill is a very sneaky way of arming teachers, and that's what he doesn't want. He doesn't want teachers to be armed, as if. See, the Democrats, they only think in terms of mandates. Mm-hmm. They love telling people what to do, whereas Republicans always talk in terms of options. So Chris Murphy, through this skewed lens of his, sees this as mandating that teachers be armed, as if a school will go to a 60-year-old
put a bandolier on her
teacher and strap her down with a bandolier and a helmet that says "Born to Kill," and tell her to take her BAR into the classroom. And it doesn't. It says, in the event that a school does choose to arm teachers, it's a choice.
Right.
Yeah.
It's not a mandatory thing.
And there are so many other things that money could do. So yes. I mean, it's unbelievable. And then the only conclusions that I can come up with are very, very pessimistic about what the Democrats actually want. And I think it's just gun confiscation is the only answer. They don't want to fix the problem. They want to take the gun.
They seem to latch on to issues that have no clear objectives or way of being solved. I think homelessness, think about that, and think about gun control. I mean, there's no way that you're ever going to solve these problems. And so they can campaign on them for infinity.
Forever.
Yeah.
Yeah. And far more children are killed per year, and especially over the last 10 years, in school bus accidents than are killed by shootings at campus.
Did you know we had one this morning in Houston?
School bus accident?
We did, in fact.
Yes.
School bus accident.
Well, and the injuries, if you just look at the injuries from school bus accidents, those are exponentially higher than injuries from firearms at schools. But, we're not advocating I'm not attacking school buses. They're absolutely necessary. Nobody's saying the school buses should be made out of Nerf, but yet Democrats hate guns. They want to exploit whatever emotional issue they can to achieve that objective. And, unfortunately, school shootings provide that emotional support.
But we hope you enjoyed this discussion. If you did, consider subscribing, hitting that like button, and help us fight the anti-2A algorithm by sharing this video.
Gunspot.com is the newest website improving the Second Amendment listing and auction space, connecting buyers and sellers in a way they'll both love. Guns, ammo, accessories, and more for sale by dealers and individuals all over the country.
Buyers get deals and never pay out-of-state sales tax or have any hidden fees like some other auction sites. But there's more. Gunspot.com Academy gives the Second Amendment community a blog, think news and entertainment space, to view 2A content. Check them out at gunspot.com.
And please comment for us below. What do you make of this? Can you come up with a rational explanation that we cannot? And until next time, we're the Armed Attorneys.
We are the Armed Attorneys.
Why?
Phone away, dude.
We've been doing this an hour ago.